Hello, everyone. Welcome to another Sunday. If your hands are in your aquarium and they're all wet, you can't say hello. I understand. If you're listening to this on the podcast after the fact or a replay, hopefully you're playing with your tanks. Maybe you're at work, who knows, but we're here to entertain you for another couple hours as we do every Sunday. So, today what I'm going to talk about, what I'm going to start talking about, is snails. Snails. What people were talking about in the chat. And we heard about him yesterday. If you're not a member of the club, Oliver Knott was speaking about his, working with Takashi Amano and aquascaping and things like that. And snails were brought up, which was interesting to me. So, for some reason, snails have this, 50-50 relationship. It's kind of like pineapple on pizza. You either love it or you hate it. You either love snails or you hate them. And we as a company love them. And so much so, like in the group the other day, someone posted that, Aquarium Co-op and Irene had put out a video on how to use alum to kill snails when you order plants. And I said, no. Irene put that video out on her own channel. That is not the Aquarium Co-op stance. And it's from different things of like, I don't like using extra chemicals on plants and just in fish tanks and stuff in general. But then also, I believe them to be very beneficial, and when we provide a solution to kill them all, people I think are worse off in their aquariums on average. I think the biggest problem we face when it comes to snails is actually people don't understand why they have so many. They are actually one of the best telltale signs that your aquarium is healthy or not. And what I mean by that is, it could be as simple as you look at the one snail you own, and you can see its shell. Is it starting to deteriorate? Do we not have enough calcium in the water? Is the pH dropping too low? You can learn things just by looking at one snail over time. And you might go, hey, that snail always looked great, but here we are 2 years later and that snail doesn't look very good. And that might mean, oh, I'm not putting enough calcium in the water or maybe in the food. And that'll clue you in, something that we don't always test for. A test kit, like the ones we sell and most companies sell, don't really specifically test for calcium. Instead, they test for hardness, which hardness is usually magnesium and calcium and could be some other things, but it wouldn't tell you how much calcium you actually had. So you could have crazy hard water and no calcium technically. So just off the get-go, just by looking at them, you could gain some information by having a snail in your aquarium. Now maybe you go, well, I don't need that. That's fine. Great. But they also are wicked good cleaners. So they'll eat algae, they'll eat fish poop, they'll eat decaying leaves. Some snails, which the ones that we don't carry, but some snails will actually eat plants too, which I think that's one of the big things people also go, well, they're like snails and slugs in my garden. They're going to eat everything. And that's not true. And people will say, I see it eating my plants. Most often what they're seeing is a dying plant. And maybe it's converting because they just bought it, or maybe they got this big Amazon sword and they're not putting 100 root tabs under it every 4 minutes, and it's actually dying back, and the snails go, great, let me help with that. That's my job. That's why I exist in nature. And so the interesting thing I found yesterday in the talk was that Takashi Amano, who is considered, let's just say, considered up on a pedestal the best aquascaper ever. Now, that's up for debate. You definitely could be like, well, this person does a crazy good job also, and maybe they're better, right? But for the sake of maybe the grandfather of aquascaping. Now, very, very particular about the aquascapes, and they had to be perfect. Everything had to be a meticulous choice, from plant placement to plant height to is there algae on the rock or isn't there. It's meant to replicate a scene that he had seen before. And so what they would do if they ran into some algae problems, they would use a lot of Amano shrimp, right? That's how we got the name Amano shrimp, is those shrimp would be used to eat algae. But they would also use snails. Now, there's no Amano snail, but I bet you if there was, all of a sudden, a lot of us would be thinking about them differently. They're not really hyped up like that. But in their show tanks in the display area of the gallery, they would put 200 snails in, leave them for a few days. They would clean everything. Then they would count and remove 200 snails. That's how they know they got them all. And I don't know what type of snail. That wasn't disclosed in the discussion, but I found it very interesting that they were used in that manner. Now, for me, maybe we don't want to buy 200 snails, right? But we do use them in our warehouse to clean up any excess algae or anything like that. And that's what we need to be doing in our aquarium. But why do they become a problem? Mostly, it's again our ecosystem. If we have tons of food source, snails will populate and they'll make more. And so when people go, I have 1 billion snails, the thing in the back of my mind goes, your ecosystem's not balanced. That's a red flag. And so one of the ways we say balancing, like, well, start feeding less, start cleaning more. Because let's say you weren't feeding your plants enough and they're dying, that's a food source. You're going to get more snails. Let's say you're feeding a really messy food that, like let's say Murphy or Ladybird's eating all these clams, but they won't eat the small parts. Well, all those small parts, if Ladybird and Murphy wouldn't eat the snails, like Ladybird doesn't eat snails, it's kind of awesome because I've got snails in our tank. They will feed on that food and make more if it's a snail that can replicate in fresh water, right? So that's why we use things like other fish that are more of a cleaner fish or to help break it down a little more. And by doing that, there's less food readily available, so you have less snails. Now, over time, if you're not gravel vacuuming or doing any maintenance there, and you're not staying on top of filter, or maybe you don't have good filtration, like good flow in there, you'll get a lot of buildup of debris just from feeding and fish pooping. And that low-level food is more and more can be kind of recycled and used over and over again by snails, and that's how you get this big population. And the one that we really see is that people say, well, I drop in a few algae wafers meant for my pleco, and then it's covered in snails. And people do that for months and months and months, and then wonder why they have a ton of snails. They're basically just feeding the snails, when they should be doing things like feeding the plecos after the lights are out or the lights are dimmed, or finding different modes, or feeding them things like bloodworms and other stuff because they're actually mostly carnivore. And so it's mostly misunderstanding and not understanding their ecosystem and what they're doing to where they get, I've got snails everywhere. Now, it can be common in a new tank. Maybe you just set up your tank, you put in some plants, some snails came in with the plants. Well, you don't have a balanced ecosystem. And so you're growing algae everywhere. Maybe you use the sand substrate and it's got lots of phosphate, so it's growing algae everywhere. And the snails are going to eat that. Now, given a choice, would I rather have tons of algae or would I rather have tons of snails? I'd rather have snails because I can go in there and just pull the snails out very easily or set up a snail trap. When it comes to a lot of algae, that's more work. And so what I think people should strive for, and those that have pulled it off kind of enjoy it, is finding a balance where you have a handful of snails. I got 4, I got 10, whatever, based on the size of the tank. And they're part of the cleanup crew in the ecosystem, helping further break stuff down so that plants can utilize it. And it's easier to get out of the aquarium instead of having to scrub the back wall in the corner down low behind a rock for that algae. Snail comes in and does it for you, and then that snail poop gets lifted to a filter for you to take away. That relationship can work out really well. And so that's what we're striving for and what I think a lot of people experience. But then there's the other 50% that experience, I just have 4 billion snails, what do I do? And the answer is not easy. The easiest answer is people just kill them, take them out, feed them, give them away, whatever. But the hard answer is balance your ecosystem so that it will live in harmony with that. And there are some species of fish and shrimp and other things that actually rely on snail shells, or snails in general, like multis or a lot of the shell dwellers from Lake Tanganyika, they rely on snails for their homes. Or in my case, like in my fish room, I have Taiwanesian rabbit snails. And the reason I have those is the food that I need to feed the tank, they need to eat, they need to poop it out and digest it so that the cardinal shrimp I have can eat that. It's a symbiotic relationship. They do worse if you don't have the snails. Now, they don't have to specifically be those snails. It could be other snails. But nevertheless, it will help me keep that type of shrimp. And so, yeah, someone was just saying that they got a Malaysian trumpet snail with with one of our plants, and they were starting to have a bunch of them. And I thought, hey, let's address this and, turn it from what in their mind may be a negative to a positive. And one more little thing about Malaysian trumpet snails, there's so much misinformation about everything in the hobby. And part of it is because we can only really go off of our own experience. And so, like, one thing with Malaysian trumpet snails, you can't feed those to puffers; they'll break their teeth. I've fed, like, I don't know, hundreds of pounds of Malaysian trumpet snails because I intentionally make them to all kinds of puffers, and never once have I seen a cracked tooth from doing so. In fact, the only time I've seen a cracked tooth is when a puffer has run into the side of an aquarium from being spooked. So, um, in my experience at least, I would say that's not a problem. I also feed them to turtles, and so I actually get tons and tons of benefits out of all the snails that I have around my store and warehouse and fish room. We put them to use, and I think most people could do that. You know, I think it's I think it's overhyped. The oh my gosh, I've got snails because of the internet, and not so much from the understanding of oh my gosh, I've got snails. What does that mean? For Dean, for instance, if you really sit him down, why does he not like snails? It's because he doesn't want anything else potentially eating eggs on something he's breeding, right? He's very laser like focused on that thing. But most people here that would listen to this aren't Dean. They're not, they don't have an entire breeding room. They're not working with all these things. Instead, most people, they keep community aquariums with plants and fish and snails, and they're enjoying it. And all the stuff I've ever bred still breeds with snails. We're talking about raised, when Dean's looking at numbers, he needs to raise 1,000 angelfish to optimize the time and the money and the expense. And if snails had eaten 100 of those eggs, he gets 900. But for the average person, 900 is still more than 10 stores are going to sell in the next 3 months. So, it's a different scale and a different problem. So while I can understand that, I don't think that applies to most of us. All right. So yeah, snails, I think they're amazing. I intentionally add them to every aquarium that I personally own, and I don't know that I would run one without it. Someone said, an apple snail ate all my son's plants. There are species of apple snails that are illegal, for instance, and that's why, because they are rabid plant eaters. That being said, the common mystery snail shouldn't prey on your plants too much unless they were already weak and dying. You're absolutely starving it to death. You have a rogue snail, but in general, you'll see lots of people have them in planted tanks and no problem. So, I would also be careful with judging a species of fish or plant or snail based on one experience. So if I have a dog that bites people, are all dogs biters? No. No. If my dogs aren't biting people, are all dogs safe? No, that's not true either. But in general, we give our advice, and because we don't have a lot of experience, sometimes we're the only fish nerd that we know. And so when you meet a new fish nerd, you go, hey, this is the experience. I don't do that. But with something like dogs or cats, you might interact with 20 of your friends. They all own a dog or a cat. You now have the experience of over 20, and you can go, hey, this is my experience with these animals. And we see that a lot at the pet store. We get to experience, not only is it, okay, we've been selling black neon tetras for 20 years, and I see them in the store in different store setups. We've been selling them to customers for 20 years, and what are all the different problems they may have encountered, the different setups, how many people have kept them with discus temperatures, how many people have tried to keep them with goldfish, how many people try to keep them with African cichlids and rainbow fish and this type of food and that type of thing, and these plants and those plants. We've seen it all. And what we see is things that logically don't make sense sometimes just work. And I've witnessed that with someone keeping frontosa, which is a big African cichlid, with angelfish. Radically different water parameters, radically different like temperaments and everything, and yet cohabitated fine. So, I had never seen it done before. So what you don't experience and don't see, you don't necessarily understand until you witness it. And all the time in my hobby, there's the statements of that's impossible, that can't be done. And then there's like, yes, but this tank exists and it's doing it. So we've already cracked the code, and it's not impossible. It can be unlikely. I could have the unicorn dog that, does or doesn't like to bite everybody or whatever, and it's the outlier. But it doesn't mean things are impossible. Just like It's not impossible to keep a beta sorority of females, but overselling them for 20 years and watching people do it, the data that I've gathered, most people are failing with our guidance. Now, maybe you're buying from someone else and they're the smartest wizard on the planet and they know exactly how to do it and will teach you. That would be great. I've yet to see that though in my experience. And so usually what we see happen is even if there's like not the fighting and you set up the tank correctly, in years 2, 18 months to 2 years, you're getting lots of females that are egg bound and things like that. And once you start losing them to being egg bound, then the hierarchy changes and there's more fighting and this and that. And so that's why we don't recommend them, but everyone's free to do what they would like to do. Just like you can keep snails or not keep snails, up to you. I find it to be beneficial. Mel's Freshwater says, I got frontosa thriving in my community tank. Yeah. When I worked at a African cichlid store, where it was primarily African cichlids, and I was the freshwater nerd that wanted community tank stuff. And we ended up making a lot of money on the community tank stuff, but the owner was an African cichlid nerd, and that irritated him because he loved African cichlids, and yet every week we were buying more and more guppies and cardinal tetras and rummy nose tetras and this and that, right? But one of the ways we were able to bridge the gap was African cichlids would actually do really well with things like barbs, rainbow fish, blood parrots, other things that you could mix, just like we mix all around the world in our community tanks. African cichlid people kind of start with, well, African cichlids got to be African cichlids. But the reality is, there's a lot of things that can go with them. Like, oh, silver dollars. What about these other fish? And it's learning the temperaments. Because you've kept both for long periods of time, you go, I bet you this would work out halfway decent. And once we started making setups that would do that, people found it to be very cool. And it kind of broke the rules. But as I saw it over the months and years of like, wow, it does look really good when you have peacocks and rainbows in the same tank. Or maybe you're doing peacocks and Congo tetras, right? Those are actually both African fish, different African ecosystems, but there's a lot of things we can do and change, and it's just, we are novices in the aquarium hobby still to this day. It's weird to think, for me anyway, it's weird to think that someone like Takashi Amano, who basically pioneered aquascaping, was doing it in the late 90s. And someone like Oliver Knott, who we had spoke, didn't really start doing it until 2002, 2003. Now, I'm becoming an old man. I turned 40 this year, and I can remember 2002 and 3 like it's nothing. Like, yeah, I remember that. And before that, it didn't really exist. My stepfather had a 55-gallon aquarium, and there was some live plants, but aquascaping was not, like, I remember going to pet stores and things, and the hobby was completely different. It's almost like a switch flipped in those 10 years to where we went from keeping fish to now we keep ecosystems, and the plants were the key to that. And so knowing that we, as a group of hobbyists, only have about 20 solid years, I would say, playing with plants, and really it's the last 12-ish, we don't know much about really mixing these things together yet, in comparison to what we will know in another 20 years, and the way that all the products will evolve and our knowledge will evolve and those types of things. So we rely a lot on, give it a try, let us know how it goes, and then we pass that information along. So, every once in a while you get to see a study about, Amano shrimp and the algae that they eat and what rate and those types of things. And but it's few and far between. So we don't really get a lot of clinical knowledge growth in our hobby. It's all testimonial, word of mouth from person to person. And you get people that will study, right? And you get someone that says, "Oh, I'm going to study." I did a lot with puffers, or people do a lot with rainbow fish or plecos, and they'll elevate, right? So if the general public's here on a topic, and let's say I studied it for a long time, 20 years, and now I'm here, but the ceiling of knowledge is actually way up here. So even our most talented people in these fields are still so far from hitting the end of the rainbow for knowledge. So we've got a long ways to go before we really understand a lot of these animals. They say betta sororities work best if they are real sisters from the same spawn and not separated at any time, plus lots of plants and landscaping for territories. Yeah, that's what they say. And then you talk to people like Dean and myself where we've done that, where we're spawning them and you watch it over time, it just devolves into the same problem. They also say like you can keep brothers and sisters together as long as they're spawned together and all of that. And everyone's got a different level of what's okay. A breeder typically will let them beat on each other. It's fine. They're not going to kill each other. But then the person has 3 kids and the kids are crying because they're fighting. That's not going to be okay. And so, in my opinion, we officially approach all betta community type setups like that with caution of like, it's not that it can't be done. It's that it's not an easy path, and it's lucrative of most people want all the color from the bettas and not the bettas themselves. And so the question always becomes, why wouldn't you just recreate this with a different fish? And usually they don't have an answer. So, all right. I live in Canada and want to use the Med Trio, but I can only find Icex. What can I use as a replacement for Fritz Marison and Paraclens? Up in Canada, most likely there's not a lot of replacements because the meds are so controlled up there. I would say having quarantine tanks and using salt would be the method I would be starting with. You could be testing other meds, but I don't even have access to your Canadian meds. So even if I wanted to, which I don't, but even if I could, even if I haven't tested them. So that's Canadians kind of come together and figure out what meds will do what, and don't necessarily rely on a business because a business is only as good as they are profit wise. And what I mean by that is, like, Aquarium Co-op's great until we're going out of business, and then what if we turn into liars, right? And so, not that other businesses are lying, that's not what I'm trying to imply, but sometimes they omit things of like, well, let's not say the truth. Why do my corridors keep getting stuck in my sponge filter? Do they swim in to stay there? When I take them, they are gasping for air or have damaged fins. We've never run into that. So, like at the store, every tank's got sponge filters. We probably have 15 different species of Corydoras. I never ran into that in the store. I've never run into it at home either. So that leads me to believe, like, what is it about your setup that's causing them to do that? Or is it one species of Corydora that I haven't kept? Like, maybe you have something very rare. My guess would be it's a food issue, like, oh, there's food in there and I'm still hungry. Or it's an oxygen issue. That's why Corydoras will go up to the top. You ever see them just like do that dart and grab a thing of air? That's what they do. So I would examine those areas. Are they getting enough food? Are they trying to get away from something? You could have like an epistogram that's on the hunt, and they're trying to get away so hard that they're getting stuck. I would look into those. All right. Let's see here. I was trying to find another comment by someone. I hate when I see half of it and I'm like, ooh, I wonder if the first half of that's interesting. And then I totally miss it. I want to follow up on something from last week. It was the person that had like a mystery illness in one of their tanks but not on the other ones, and they said that all the problem came from changing water, and was it their water that was the problem? And then we kind of talked about how Murphy was having some problems and that we can only test for so many things, right? Well, that person updated us and let us know that it was actually shampoo was the problem, right? So even though they were ready to like stop changing water and doing all of these things, shampoo, I don't know how it was set up, but their bottle was leaking and it had got onto the the hose or the python, right? And that got into the tank, and that ended up being the problem. And while that's super unlikely, it's funny that it's very likely in my line of work, because If it was something easy, like, oh, we just have ammonia or we have this other thing and I know how to take care of it, we never hear about it. And so customer service and that kind of stuff, or working at a fish store, the questions that come in tend to be elevated just in general, because there's people that have been in the hobby for 30 years. Maybe Dean's got this crazy case going on. He would never talk to us if it's like, oh, well, I had the filter unplugged for 3 days. I know what the answer is. But if he's got this mystery for it, he would ask us, like, what do you think? And so, it tends to be that common. That's why I do tell people, like, don't discount lotion. In this case, it was shampoo or perfumes or things getting into your tank. It happens almost all the time. We just don't know it. When you cook bacon in your house, or you're smoking in your house, or you're vaping, or you're doing these things that we know you can smell in a different room, those get worked into your aquarium. And so, I wouldn't be shocked that if there was a local diner and there was an aquarium on the other side of the grill and they're frying burgers and bacon and that kind of stuff all the time, that there wouldn't be a protein film on the surface of that water all the time. And it just, we typically focus on this ecosystem we've made as though it is the ecosystem that doesn't rely on anything else. But the reality is it relies on a human and all the space around that human. And a lot of things can interfere with that. So how's Murphy doing? Last when I talked with Brandon, I asked him about it, and he said, Murphy's still eating, and he's just not eating with the vigor that he used to. And he, one of the thoughts was maybe he's just getting too spoiled, because a lot of times people will come in, they get to feed him with clams on the tongs. He'll eat out of the tongs all day long. But if you just kind of do what we would normally do, is like, here's your food, like Ladybird, right? I put him in, she eats the clams. And so maybe maybe over time where we've conditioned him to like, no, I wait for it to drop in my mouth. And so, we haven't made any moves yet. We want to see if there's a big change when we move Murphy to his much, much larger aquarium. And maybe I'll have a different feeding pattern. If not, we can start to play that game of, okay, well, we have to force you. And the way we would approach that would be, try feeding every other day. Oh, it still only eats from that? Okay, try feeding every third day, or try eating every fourth day, whatever. You don't want to starve them to death, obviously. And it takes weeks to starve an animal to death. So we're not trying to do that. But if you offer, think of it like a toddler. If you offer them Brussels sprouts and they say no, and then a minute and a half later, you're like, well, would you like a bowl of ice cream then? You're teaching them to just always say no to the vegetable because they get ice cream. And so over time, if you stop offering the ice cream, they're more likely to go, okay, well, I'll have that vegetable, or find vegetables they like. And that's the same with fish. We find is, you don't want to starve them. But at the same time, if you always give in and offer them their preferred food, they never learn to eat something else. And so we take the method usually when we're doing that with any type of fish, whether it's arowanas or something wild caught or whatever it is. We try to leave something for them to eat in the tank at all times. So, oh, I get it. You're a discus and you love frozen bloodworms, but we're not doing that anymore. And we're going to leave pellets. I'm going to feed them twice a day and net them out. And eventually, after weeks, they go, you know what? I'm really hungry. I'll start eating those. And we still might feed the bloodworms once a week because we don't want fish to get too skinny or anything like that. But it's usually, there's a lot of learned behaviors with fish. And so we are the teachers of that. James Holbrook, always feeling at home at the live streams. I'm glad you enjoy them, buddy. How long do plants stay in your system before selling? I got Pogo at 2 different times, and they look drastically different. One was immersed grown. Well, there's a few factors there. So sometimes, if we're really slow, maybe the plants are in there for 2 or 3 weeks. If we're really fast, like when the lights, might only been a day or 2. The other aspect that you wouldn't necessarily know is that the 2 specimens you got could be from completely different farms, grown in completely different parts of the world. So that's why we have a disclaimer on most of the plants that says like they're gonna vary, because even time of year. So if you buy one in the middle of summer, that will grow and look way different than one in the middle of winter, because in the middle of winter, they're using a lot of supplemental lighting and things like that to grow it. Where in the summer, they're shading it a bunch because there's way too much sun. And if they don't shade it fast enough or at the right amount, something like pogo will get really tall, right? And so the difference we see in a plant, and we actually make these laminated cards and everything for every farm we work with and go, look, this is what we want. This is what we advertise to the customer, and we want it to be this. A lot of stores and things will be like, oh, bigger is better. But when it comes to shipping and people wanting the same experience, that's not better for us. And so if in the middle of summer, if one day of this stem plant growing, let's say it puts out leaves and one day is this big, so it's 2 inches, and then it puts out leaves, that's called a really leggy plant. Now, if it was starving for light and that kind of stuff, and maybe it only grows half an inch each day and then puts out new leaves. And so those two plants will look radically different. You can get leaves that are twice as long or short, both being immersed. And then there's the extra factor of how long has it been in our system, and we can get a couple of days might be, it's 2 or 3 inches of new submerged growth. It also could depend on what day of the week you're ordering. So let's say we get a batch of 1,000 pogo in on Thursday and you order on Friday. If we were out previously, it's got 1 day of growth. If you order the following Friday, you might be at, we've got 200 left of the 1,000 and we have 1,000 coming in. Now you're buying a pogo that's got 7 days of submerged growth. Now, and some of those might be, this is actually a 3-week system, and we can't really do anything about that. And what I mean by that is there's weather events, natural disasters, but then snow and things like that. There's holidays. There's different shipping schedules. So like if we're supposed to get plants on Thursday, right? And they normally, a farm might ship them to us on Wednesday, we get them on Thursday. Well, if it's Thanksgiving, they might have to ship on a Monday. And so we might get excess plants, they might sit a little longer, or the opposite of, they will arrive on Friday or Saturday as opposed to Thursday. So that's where you're going to get that variance. And really, I've said a bunch before, when you're buying plants, you're mostly buying the roots. You want a decent root structure, and yes, you want the plant too, but, think of it like you're almost buying you're buying starts. Maybe that's what we should almost try and find a way to convey that better. You're buying little starter plants that's really what you're buying, and you need to nurture them and grow them and turn them into mother plants, where I think a lot of new people wouldn't know that, they're necessarily buying a starter. It's, the difference between buying a tree for your yard that's 2 feet or 10 feet or, the level of established thing you're buying. But yes, it's very hard to predict because we could also, the problem we run into is, let's say we try to order it less frequently and have more grow time, and then they short us, right? So we buy 2,000 of them, and we're growing them and everything, and we're getting close to selling out, and go, okay, well, we need 2,000 more. Ooh, sorry, we only have 200. Like, oh no, now that's an even worse scenario for everybody. So we basically just order and try to, our main goal is always we're using algorithms and things, and we're trying to keep 2 weeks of stock worth of plants, both at the retail store and at the warehouse. And part of the problem is videos change that, and it could be a video we shot a year ago, and YouTube goes, hey, we're going to show this video about this plant to all these people, and now we're selling tons. We can't control that. We also just can't have 1 billion of every plant, because then they grow too big and we don't have enough storage. And so that's what makes the wet part of our business, it's always going to be the hardest. Because like sponge filters, we literally have 50,000 of them in stock. You guys buy a ton, we have them, that's great. But when it comes to a plant, this week we might sell 1,000 Java Fern, next week's 200, the week after is 1,500, and that's for every plant. And so we'd love to be able to, let's have just more than enough of every plant, but it's not practical because all the plants take maintenance too. So for X amount of plant tanks, we have to have X amount of employees And if they're not selling, we can get into trouble very quickly in terms of workload. Struggling to get crushed coral in Australia. Can coral skeletons or coral bones be used? Yeah, they can. Mostly any coral structure will have, it's made up of the same stuff for the most part, and we'll do it. Like Dean likes to use coral chunks is what he likes. I like to crush coral myself, but he likes to put them behind his matin filters, and that's just what he likes. A lot of what people like are what they're used to. Why change something that works? And so why, you don't want to add extra variables if you don't have to. I love the Oliver Knott presentation. Me too. I really enjoyed it, and yeah, I think he's an inspiration to the aquascaping hobby. What I like about him is, while he's done very well in competitions and everything, and studied under the master, he will do his own thing. Like in the presentation yesterday, my favorite was the Pandascape. Something really cool, brings new people into the hobby. People that are seasoned and veterans also thought it was cool, and he's able to bring all of those people together, which most aquascapes don't. You can kind of go, oh, that's cool. That's very, technical. A lot of the scaping events, what does well is technical, and there's flavors of the year. It's kind of a weird thing to see, like, oh, this year everybody's doing this style, or the only styles that placed are this style because the judges favored this style, and there's like a meta game to it of who's judging, what scape should I do. I know they tend to like this style more, and so he's kind of just out there and free doing his thing, which I find to be very cool. What's the top selling plant, and is it one of my personal favorites? I think right now our top selling plant might be Pogo. I love that plant, but it's not my favorite. My favorite plant, it's hard. So you guys, if you watch what I'm doing in my tanks, you'll know what I love. I love cryptocorns, and I love Anubias and Java ferns, and I love Val. If you got rid of all the other plants on the planet, I still would have a great time. What I do find a little interesting is when we were looking at Oliver Knott scapes yesterday and stuff, I still knew all of these very rare plants and things like that, and I've done a bunch of them, and people fell in love with Hygrophila pinnatifida. And what's funny is people are like, well, why don't you sell it? Like, oh no, we did for years. No one bought it. So it's like we tried it, and just because something's very cool, and I like that plant actually. It's a very cool stem plant that can be grown kind of as a rhizome, so it gets stuck onto things. But commercially viable, not really, because it looks green like a tree when you sell it. That doesn't look like the pictures I see online, and people don't quite have enough light and they struggle with it. And so it never really did really well at mass scale, but it's an incredible plant. So there's plants like that I really do love. I really love Apontigetans because they're so simple that you hand someone a handful of Apontigetans and they have this lush garden in their tank now. The problem with Apontigetans is they're only made at basically one place. They can be hard to get a hold of. They're kind of expensive. They have some bulb issues and things like that. But outside of that, they can turn anybody into kind of a planted wonderland hero. I love Cabamba aquatica. Yeah, it's illegal in our state and illegal in quite a few states. So that's another challenge that we have is, sometimes there's really cool plants, but they're illegal in over half the states. Like Anacris is another one. It's illegal in a lot of states. And so we just choose not to sell it. Well, and it's illegal in our state too. Technically, we can sell it because we're exporting it, but it's not worth the extra hassle and the extra inspections and all of those things to make sure that none ever accidentally goes to the retail store and that kind of stuff. So, is Nymphea rubra the fancy name for dwarf aquarium lily? No, there's a lot of different aquarium or lilies. A lot of them, the same ones that are like pond lilies and aquarium lilies, they're kind of all the same, as in, like, they can be grown in either one. Some just get a little bigger and some stay a little smaller. But even a lot of the aquarium lilies like the dwarf aquarium lily is still huge for an aquarium, let's be honest, right? There are some that are a little easier to propagate in an aquarium as opposed to um, a pond. Like the micrantha lily, that's the lily where instead of like expanding from the bulb, it makes new plants from the center of its leaves. Some of that stuff, as I get the fish room kind of more up to speed where I want it, I'm going to dabble in a few more plants that I love. Like I love Nymphoides species Taiwan, which is a banana plant without bananas, but it ships terribly. If you're ordering that anywhere online, expect for it to have a rough ride. No one produces it commercially that I know of, and part of the reason is shipping it around the country is brutal. So even from a farm on an airplane to us, brutal bad. But great plant, fun plant. Let's see here. Yeah, I had Kabamba and it blew up. Very fast grower Kabamba. Another, like the purple Kabamba, very cool plant. Same with the red. A sister plant, I liked that. I really like Ambulia as well. But again, it's kind of fine leaf, and while it looks really cool, it is a magnet for collecting debris. You got to get in there with your hand every few days and fan it to keep the debris off of it so it doesn't just grow algae and become a pain. And if you put way too much flow on it, it just falls apart. But it's a fun plant. It just too much work. Let's see here. Dwarf Sagittarius has become illegal in one city in New Zealand. Yep, plants, it's our responsibility to not let plants get out into the wild and fish and animals and things like that. It happens all the time, by the way. Like, there's people are always releasing turtles and other species here in Washington, and I'm sure that way around most of the world. But if we do our best to avoid that, we can limit the exposure to nature. And it's not, most things like trying to do better for the environment and everything, no one solution is the fix. But that doesn't mean that we shouldn't put some effort. And we don't all have to put the same effort, and it doesn't all make the same sense to everybody. But, it's the reason why we pay extra money to have the cardboard dumpster emptied a few times a week at the warehouse, as opposed to when you have another big dumpster sitting right next to it and you just throw it in the garbage. We can do that too. But we pay the extra money and make the effort. And I'm the first one to admit that recycling in America right now is not great for most areas. It could be improved, and we could pay more money to make it happen in more sustainable ways, I think. But, slow is progress. I was kind of reflecting on slow progress last night. Actually, I read through, you guys have left us 75 reviews on the light. And, I hadn't really read through them outside the first few on the first day. But it was really a trip, I guess, to read through them all and see something that we've been working on for 4 to 5 years, and the frustration level that we've had, and the projects we scrapped, and the lights that we built and then decided not good enough. And, it was good to see that there are people that once they have the light, they see the difference. They see the difference in the build quality, the light output, both in color and intensity, the longer cord, the attention to details, as opposed to Haiger lights and night crew and stuff. And they totally, the reviews are great. I think they're really good because they really, all of the people together can articulate the question that we get asked so often: how's it any better than this light? And the answer is, it's not. It's not. That's a simple answer. A light is a light. A filter is a filter. A fish is a fish. right? It's all preferences and ease of use and things like that, you know. So if you're really if you had someone uneducated about cars and you're like, well, how is the Hyundai Elantra different than the Toyota Camry? The answer is it's not. The reality is it's going to get you from point A to point B. There's some different prices. But if you don't know anything about cars, you might not appreciate a manual crank window versus the electric one. And, you know, building a product, it's hard to do because there's people like me. I'd rather have the manual crank. I can fix that. When, oh no, the button doesn't work. Like, oh, it's going to be $700 in electric diagnosing to fix that, right? But then there's other features like, I don't know, air conditioning or heated seats. Like, oh yeah, I really want that. That's a feature I value. And so it was good to see that the people that bought the lights, obviously, if you bought it, you're more likely to have liked the features that were there. And, you know, they're resonating with people of like, oh, yes, I'm glad. And it was just simple things. People hadn't necessarily realized how much of a pain it was to set up maybe lights with apps and things like that. And the experience of this is like, oh, it's easy and good. And that's really what we're trying to do is we always focus on how do we make it easier and better for someone to enter this hobby and have success having a Planet Community tank. That's our goal. That's that North Star of like, does this help someone keep a Planet Community tank? The goal is not, does it help Dean breed stuff? Does it help a fish farm do a thing better? Does it help someone win an aquascaping competition? That's not the goal. Our goal is more people understanding ecosystems and nature in general in their home. And if we can help further that along, we're accomplishing that. So it was good to read those 75. I recommend if you're on the fence, read through them. And, you know, there was quite good ones. My wife wants me to stop feeding our puffer crayfish because I cut off their arms, but I'm pretty sure he's hooked on it. How do you wean puffers off of food? Yeah, especially live food can be difficult, but same process. Feed them less. You know, oh, if you're feeding them every other day, start feeding them every third or fourth day. The other thing, you know, you can try to get them onto something like maybe you're going from live crayfish, right? And maybe that's every day. Start going to live crayfish every other day, then try live crayfish every third day. That's not, you know, so now you're feeding live crayfish every third day, and he only wants the live crayfish. Start trying some frozen crayfish on the other days. Offer it up, doesn't eat it, take it out, throw it out. Try it again. Eventually, they'll usually convert. Now, if that's really still not working, try basically soaking both of them in garlic. And so you might have a container in the live crayfish and it's in garlic. It's going to smell garlicky once you put it in. Also do that with the frozen ones on the other day. Try to get some similarities going and a pattern. And it's not easy. And that's why, you know, if you're buying a rare fish or like a stingray or a puffer or something like that, something that's expensive, ask to see it eat. And 100% a puffer that was, you know, maybe eating pellets or, you know, something that'll eat pellets, frozen, live, it'll just eat anything you throw at it is, in my opinion, worth more and is a better animal than something that will only eat Dungeness crab. Like, oh, that's gonna be expensive and hard to source. That's not as easy. And then, you know, it's up to you whether you could get it to transition to other foods. I've never cared about a heated seat, but man, I will never have another vehicle without a heated steering wheel. Yeah. My only big technology in cars that I don't think I can ever go back from is a backup camera. It just makes life so much easier and safer, I believe. Now, I have a vehicle out there that doesn't have one, and you know, I'm probably gonna get one put in it. My Nubius flower didn't know it would do that. Very cool. Yeah, looks like a little corn on the cob. Is the temperature affecting the ammonia in others in some way? Oh, I think that might be a question. The other thing, in general, I don't account for temperature and readings of water parameters. It's not that it doesn't have an effect, it's that it's such a small piece of that equation that I find it's like, don't worry about it. Is there an easy way to replace a snail population outbreak from, say, Malaysian truffle snails to mystery snails? Well, easy is relative, but probably not. Like, you could just put some mystery snails in there. Like, Malaysian trumpet snails mostly want to feed when it's dim out, and they can eat throughout the gravel and the substrate and things like that, where the mystery snail can eat kind of all day long. If you were to, source, not source, but yeah, source a trap or make a trap, you could export a lot of the Malaysian trumpet snails, and that will kind of get you in the right direction. But to truly have a switch over and not have any would be difficult without using something like assassin snails. And then you're going to start, oh, I made a bunch of assassin snails because they had a bunch of protein source, which is these snails, and so they made a bunch, and then you can remove all of them. And but I don't think it should necessarily be, how do I remove all of this normal earthworm from my garden and only have red wigglers? And the answer is like, well, you're better off you just have both. And I would say the same thing here. Like, you're better off just kind of have both snails. I can't get my brine shrimp eggs to hatch. Any ideas? Start with the basics. Keep them warm. Try them at 80 degrees. Use the Aquarium Co-op easy brine shrimp salt, right? Make sure you don't have any residual, like, gunk in your hatcher or any, like soap. I mean, I wouldn't use soap, but maybe you do. The other thing that, while I will always agree that you can hatch brine shrimp eggs in anything, the shape of the container does lend itself. So a well-optimized container will get a better hatch rate and make it easier compared to like a 2-liter bottle. I've hatched an insane amount in a 2-liter bottle, but just the shape and in general and cleaning a 2-liter bottle and the scratches that get in it, and but I would say mostly brine shrimp eggs are A plus B equals C. And if you go, hey, it's not working, really just keep analyzing A and B and going, okay, there's something here going on. What's going on? And you might be doing something like, people love to overcomplicate things of like, well, of course I had to chlorinate my water before I make brine shrimp eggs. Like, no. That's not the instructions. Chlorine actually helps hatch brine shrimp eggs. It helps dissolve the egg. You could also just try a different water source. Maybe your water source, something's going on. Take a scoop of water out of your established aquarium that seems to be doing really well. Try hatching it there. If that doesn't work and you're still like, okay, it just doesn't work, try getting some salt water from a local fish store. Go, hey, can I buy 5 gallons of salt water? Scoop that up, put the eggs in. Does that work? If that doesn't work, then I'd be like, there must be something going on with your temperatures. They're swinging or something, because even in full-on salt water, these animals are made to live there. Now, there is like a 1 in a billion chance somehow you've got a bad batch of eggs, but the odds of that are so crazy low because we track everything and we're shipping to all these people. The odds of one specific can having something wrong, I don't think I've seen it. If there was going to be something wrong, it'd be a bigger batch. And we would say, oh yeah, it's here, let's send you some new ones. We actually end up sending people new eggs too often because they're like, hey, it must be your eggs. And it's like, maybe but whenever we've had them back and tested them, they've worked every single time. So it's, what people also don't realize is not every brine shrimp egg is the same. They're collected in different parts of the world. They're made in different parts of the world. They need different parameters. There's even 2 different sizes of brine shrimp. A lot of people don't know that. So, but I would just, really it sounds weird, but A plus B is going to get you that answer of C. And so it's usually one of our inputs is wrong, even though, no, I did it. I'm doing it right. we know we think we are, but a lot of times like, oh, I see where we're going wrong. It actually does dip down at night, or oh, it actually is something in the water, or it is the container shape, or I do have way too much air or not enough air, or I do have this or that. So, do I recommend buying a light the same length as your aquarium? Yes. In general, I think most people enjoy that the most. I like a evenly lit aquarium. If you have a 20-inch long aquarium, buy a 20-inch light. Don't buy the 12 or the 16 when it comes out. It's not that you can't. I just think in general, the light makes the biggest difference in your aquarium visually. And so the more light you have to play with, the more the more satisfaction you could potentially get. I had the same issue with brine shrimp the other week. Once I added a small heater to the container, the hatch rate greatly increased. Yeah, I mean, we're creatures of habit, right? So I got my water, I put my eggs in, and it hatches. And it could do that. You could do that for 3 months straight, and you're like, I am the best brine shrimp hatcher in the world. And then it's wintertime, and you don't account for your fish room runs 3 degrees cooler in the winter than it does in the summer. And you've changed nothing. You've changed nothing. Like, you do the same routine, but the environment has changed. We also, over the course of a year, your tap water changes, right? And one of the biggest things people don't account for is the water they start their eggs in. So I know cold water out of my tap might be 40 degrees right now. Cold water out of my tap when it's 90 degrees out is like 65 degrees. The amount of time it takes like 2 liters of water to go from 40 degrees to 80 degrees might be hours. That's going to change my hatch rate by a lot. So eliminating variables and trying to go back to the beginning of like, okay, well, what could have changed? It's a lot of I'm doing the right thing, but somehow I'm not getting the result. And the way the world works is if it's A plus B equals C, A or B have to be wrong. It's not that you're wrong, it's that somehow they have to be wrong. Do I ever worry about fish having TB, which is tuberculosis? Yeah, I mean, it's much more common in rainbow fish, but I don't focus on it because, like, there's tons of diseases that there's nothing we can really do about. That's what Hank died from. He died to a disease there's no known cure for, and it's in the wild. So it's not like I introduced it to him. He already had it, died at like the age of 5 from it. And so if I spent all my time going, well, this thing could have a problem, we just wouldn't keep fish. So I don't, but I don't go out of my way to like, let's make sure my fish, visits every neighbor every day to make sure we really spread disease. I don't do that either. But in general, I approach the hobby like this. Ooh, that's something pretty I'd like to keep in my home. I'm going to do that. And then I'm going to learn about it and I'm going to try my best. And I might kill it tomorrow. I might keep it for the rest of my life. I might breed it. Who knows? But my hobby for me is that's how it started. That thing is amazing. I wish I could watch that more instead of here at the store. I'm going to bring that home. Same thing with my dog. We know, oh, my little chihuahuas, they could have bad hips. They could get cancer. They could go blind. They could do this. They could do that. But I have dogs because I love them and I want to interact with them on a daily basis. And so, so rainbow fish. Rainbow fish are more likely to get TB. But if I want rainbow fish, I'm going to keep rainbow fish tomorrow because I'm here to play in the hobby. So now, if I had an active case of TB, I'd be sterilizing and make sure I don't spread to other tanks, right? That's just responsible. But I wouldn't let it hold me back from enjoying what I set out to do, and that is just play with fish and enjoy them. So glad you now have a reseller in Utah. Wish there were more. Hey, the best thing you guys can do is over time, ask your local stores, go, hey, more and more people are carrying this stuff. You can even, one of the best things you could do, honestly, which it's work, right? So don't do it if you don't want to, but you could show them products. You can go, hey, I really like this light, or hey, I really like this thing. You guys should really think about carrying it. They have a program. Do know that not all stores get in. Some, they've got too bad of reviews, or, like one we had it where, and I don't know, they could be in here for all I know, but the employees really want us, and they finally applied. And we actually have like 5 like this, where they finally apply, and we're like, great, you're all set up. And it's been 8 months, and every month we check in, like, would you like to place an order? What are you doing? And they're just, oh yeah, I keep meaning to maybe think about doing a thing, and they just don't. So eventually we'll just close those accounts down because they just sit out there in no man's land. It's more tracking for the accountants of making sure that their reseller permits and everything are up to date and all of that. But yeah, I mean, one of the best things you guys could do if you wanted to be able to buy them locally is to show them why. You can obviously tell them like, hey, I really like buying this product, but I also think that people are just busy and they don't know what Easy Green would do, or a light would do, or a sponge filter. How's it different, right? They won't know price and everything until they contact us, but we know that it'll likely make them more money. But that's every salesman that walks through the door. And so I think it's different if the hobbyist comes in and goes, I really like buying this stuff. I'm buying it online. We could be buying it from you. This is something you might want to consider. And maybe after the 4th or 5th customer says that over the span of 6 months, they go, you know what, I should look into this. And then hopefully it's a good match. When do I normally go live? 12 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, 3 p.m. Eastern Time. Each Sunday is a time you should be cleaning your tanks and listen to me ramble and answer people's questions and kind of just staying active in the hobby. I know that Katie Tropical's coming back to live streaming, and they don't like the Q&A, which I understand. It's not an easy job or not always fun. Some days the episodes are good, some days are bad. But I think it's I view it as a community resource. And what I mean by that is the ongoing conversation and the hangout. That's the important part. The fact that the 814 people in here right now, in their mind, block out like, yeah, Sundays. I'm gonna do my maintenance on Sundays. I'm gonna drop a question in there. I'm gonna talk to a couple other people in there, and I'm just gonna be loosely in that community. And I think that's what's really important, is giving a place for people to belong and knowing, building a routine. In a perfect world, in my opinion, you'd grab something great to eat, and then you kind of settle down at home and go, hey, I'm going to work on my tanks now. I'm going to have an enjoyable, relaxing Sunday. Maybe you go back to work the next day, or maybe you're already at work, whatever it is. But that routine, and it's become a routine for me, and I'm doing everything I can to make sure nothing gets in the way of that routine of, yeah, Sundays are going to be laid back. It's live stream, then go have dinner with grandma, and that's the way my Sundays kind of work. I eat breakfast beforehand, and I think that's what it's more about. It's not so much about, I've maybe Aquarium Co-Op has graduated from that. I don't know. That sounds probably too pompous to even say it, but it's not so much about the views anymore. And we've grown and we're doing okay, and I think by diversifying and selling wholesale to stores and all of this, and having the Facebook group and the forum and these things, I really just want community. We know we can do shorts. We're watching other creators that are like, oh, look at that, they're getting 10 million views this month when last month they got 1 million. But it's shorts, and it's content that, for the most part, I don't think is community building. And I used to say educational, but I think it's both. It needs, in my opinion, the content I like to consume and make would be educational or interesting. Some piece of that, and then some piece of building a community, and so this thing, it's a beacon to gather around and discuss. A lot of times I learn, hey, do you see the new filter that's coming out? Hey, do you see this thing? I wouldn't know a lot of that without you guys. So, should you stop dosing ferts if you're medicating? I do. I don't think you have to, but I want the least amount of variables, right? And so I do out of habit of like, yeah, I don't know. I haven't seen any bad interactions between meds and the fertilizer, but I also, I don't know. But a lot of times with meds, I'll turn down the lights. I guess that's something I don't say a lot of times. Um, when fish are sick at the store and in quarantine and at home, a lot of times one of the things is turning off the light or turning it way down. Um, when you don't feel well, right? You usually don't want to be in a brightly lit room and just I got a headache, my eyes hurt. And so you kind of, you lay in bed and you have the light off and you just have it be quiet and low key and all of that. And so I like to do that when I use meds a lot. It's not that I won't turn it on to like I need to visually inspect the fish. How are they looking today? Those types of things. But um, I also know that they need to rest because I'm putting meds and they're sick, and so I try to do that. Tequila Goodieads, I got them from the store recently. Just dropped fry. Awesome. Keep that's a cares fish. Keep it going. It's a critically endangered in the wild. Yeah, earlier in the chat, a lot of people were saying they really enjoy the Sunday community because it got them working in their fish room again, and they're happier. And I am I would say I really experience that where when I'm in my fish room and it's going better, I enjoy it. But if I'm neglecting it, I hate it. Right? I look at it like, oh, I'm embarrassed by that. Why don't I do more? And the better you get it going, the more you're proud of it, the more you want to go out there and work on it. And so, it's a good reason if you got something, a routine helps to make it easy. Can you take Java fern starts and grow them hydroponically? You can. You just need to be very humid. So, um, yeah, I know a guy that used to have a box that was basically just an acrylic box about this big and it was 4 feet long. And he'd pump some water through like the brown clay balls that sit at the bottom, and he'd put Anubias and Java ferns and things up there. And what he did was he would rehab Anubias. So maybe because he had a lot of cichlids and stuff and it get covered in blackbeard algae, well, you put it up in this box and it would grow, but it would also, the algae didn't like that as much, so it would die off. And so, kind of that hydroponic system, modified, right, obviously, but yeah, fun to play with. My 48-inch easy beam plant idea, my 75, has caused my plant growth to just erupt. I love it. Yeah, a lot of people are, so in like if you read those reviews, a lot of people are getting purling and they've never gotten it before. And they also had very powerful lights. It takes the right color spectrum. People don't realize that when you get way too nerdy into lighting and plants, and I only scratch the surface, that plants see different colors in different intensities. And so blue is one of the least for a plant, but algae sees it great. And so all these lights that have blue in it, and they have a lot of blue because then you can sell it for freshwater or saltwater and all of that, and it's not hyper optimized to a planted aquarium. But with all of that, because you've got all these extra blue LEDs and it's pretty blue light, the plants can barely even utilize it. So if you have 20% of your LEDs that are blue, your light is just 20% weaker to the plant. Now, that's one of the differences when it's like, but on the par meter, your light isn't as bright. Well, a par meter sees blue all the same, pretty much. And so it goes, hey, you got 100 units of par. And the Aquarium Co-Op light's only 90 units of par. But a plant goes, yeah, there's 100 units of light, but I can only see 80 of them. And then you go to the Aquarium Co-Op light, like, but I can see 90. So it actually is more light to the plants, even though it's less light to the meter. And so yeah, it's fun to see a lot more people experiencing plants actually being more happy, better growth, and all of that. And it's stuff that I take for granted of like, well, of course you just have a great light. But because I have designed lights and I've worked with lights and all of those things, I naturally know like, that light's going to be terrible for plant growth. Don't use that one. I would never buy that. But it's too long of a conversation, and in the position I'm in, it often is taken as, Aquarium Co-Op or Cory is just saying that because they don't sell that light and they want you to buy their more expensive light and therefore don't buy XYZ light. And you guys I haven't hidden it over the years. You've seen me over the years. I've used a million different types of lights on all my tanks, and I've tried and experimented a bunch of things. And I'm honest. You'll see in the latest video that well, probably next month in my fish room, the lights overhead that were lighting the totes in my tanks, they're dropping like flies. I lost like 6 in a week last week. And so while what saved me was going to save me money at the front, now here we are at year 2, and it's costing me a ton of money. And so now you can learn from my mistake of like, yeah, I tried to do this. I liked the effect, but it's not saving me any money long term. And I think that we're trying to build a hobbyist that's going to be in the hobby for the next 20 years. And when you look at something like an Aquarium Co-op light versus something cheap, on average, our light's going to work a lot longer, use less energy, and it just makes a whole lot more sense. But if you're someone who's new to the hobby, you don't even know you'll be around in a week and a half, that $20 light makes a whole lot of sense. I got to be honest. Or if your budget allows, like, there's so many things to, I would never fault someone for going, well, I'm 14 or I'm 28 and I saved up for 3 months and now I've got $40 and I want to buy a light. There's a lot of lights that make sense for that. I'm not going to poo-poo you and go, well, you should save up for 2 years and buy one of ours. That doesn't make sense. So I get it. Let's see. Upgraded the light, and I can confidently say purling is at least 4 times as much. The cake batter video is very educational for anyone struggling. Yeah, I wish that video, I'm hoping YouTube will find the audience and more people will watch that, because I really do think that'll help a lot of people. But, that's another example of I want to make a video that I think helps people and not one that gets a ton of views. Ideally, they do both. That's the perfect, that's the peanut butter and jelly of like, people learned a lot and a lot of people liked it. That was great. But it's I'm disheartened with the way marketing's going over the last 2 or 3 years, and I'm glad that the public is starting to wake up. There's all these Facebook things where what was the last one I saw yesterday that people were attacking it like, one was a cooking hack. It's like 20 cooking hacks. And the first one was like a microwaved meal, and one side is the rice and the other side is like the meat and the sauce. And the cooking hack is to cut it in half, dump the rice into a bowl, and then dump the meat and the sauce. And people are like, that's not a hack at all. That's just called cooking and blah, blah. And then people finally started saying, and I love this, people are chiming in like, you don't get it. They say something's a hack that's an everyday thing so that you'll leave a comment that says everybody knows that. Because once you engage, then it's going to feed you like 50 more of their videos. And so I'm glad that people are kind of waking up to that of like, here's a hack on how to open the soda. And then people go, that's how everyone opens a soda. But the minute you leave a comment, it shows it to your 2,000 Facebook friends or whatever, right? And so I'm glad to continually make stuff that it's not going to go viral. But for the 17,000 people that want to learn about PAR, hopefully I move the needle one notch and like, hey, I know a little bit more. Instead of, I could make, I don't know, probably some video about, I don't even know. Stuff dying always works well. Big numbers work well. Insane claims work well. But, I don't think that, lucky for us, that doesn't reinforce the Aquarium Co-op. Like, doing something crazy and sensational doesn't lend authenticity to like, yeah, you worked really hard on that light, so. Are brown spots on swords normal? Usually that's a sign that one or two things. Either A, you've got like a pleco eating on it and it caused damage and it's browning out. Or the more likely thing, those brown spots, sometimes they're brown and they have like a little yellow around them. That's usually a nitrogen deficiency and a sign it wants more root tabs. But if it just got damaged somehow, like sometimes loaches will do that, they'll poke holes in leaves, it'll brown out. So look for, I think it's a physical damage thing, or could it be running a little bit light on food? How about an aquarium discount day at Taco Bell? I'd do that. Someday maybe we'll grow up to be a big boy brand and we'll be able to cross genres like that. That'd be fun. YouTube apparently pushes videos with interactions, so likes, comments, and shares could push the video to more people. If it gains momentum, it would just snowball. A bit, yes. I mean, those all have weight, but the biggest thing is actually watch time. So if you click into one of our videos and you leave a comment and you like it and you share it, maybe that's worth, we're going to translate it to dollars. Maybe that's worth $20, 20 points. But every minute you watch the video is worth a point. And so if you watch a 45-minute video, that's 45 points. Now, obviously, if you watch the whole video and you click share and like and leave a comment, but everything you do on a platform has a weight. So if you add it to your library to watch later, if you hit subscribe on that video. So if we put out a video and everyone's subscribing on that video will get pushed more, right? If you started buying memberships on that video will get pushed more. They all have a little bit of weight to it. And, gaming the system is the easiest way. If I just have more people like leaving a comment, that's going to be better than not. But, at what cost? That's the long-term thing. At what cost? Microwaves heat more evenly if you put your plate off center of the microwave plate. I didn't know that. I don't know if that's true. I've got to be careful because sometimes I'll just be like, yeah, that's got to be a thing. And if I don't ever Google it and understand it, I'll find myself like telling my mom, like, hey, do you know this? And it could be total lie. I don't know. It's the internet. We don't know anything. Is it practical to keep Daphnia long term? I really want to buy pipefish, but I'm afraid the work that goes into feeding them. It is a lot of work. It's very rewarding when you have a thriving Daphnia pond or something like that. But I would tell you, work on the Daphnia because all your fish will love that no matter what. And if you get to be like, yeah, I got a good sustainable Daphnia thing going for like a year, maybe 2 years, then getting pipefish, easy peasy, no brainer. And meanwhile, all your fish are loving that food anyway. So it's a kind of, I would say, become a Daphnia keeper, and then the world opens up for you if you can do it. If you don't, no worries. For a 40 breeder, the 36-inch light is the best size one, right? Yep. On my 40 breeders, all of them running one 36-inch light. Is Chemi Pure Green worth it? In my opinion, no. But I'm biased. I own a store. My usual logic for most things, if we don't sell it, there's one of two reasons. Either A, we don't believe in the product, or B, there's a challenge for us to I believe in 180-gallon aquariums, but we're not going to ship you one, right? With that product where it's like a small like little pouch, it's like, yep, it could work. But my question is, sometimes there's better ways to get to it. And I just don't like to run a whole lot of products. So Chemi Pure Green, you also can run Seachem, Purigen, fairly similar. But my pushback is, like in a planted tank, why are we running this when the plants will do it also? We could find a better balance. Maybe it's a little more plants. Maybe it's changing food or fertilizer or something like that. There are always going to be outliers of like, well, my phosphate's over 9,000 out of my well. Like, okay, well, sure. But yeah, I'm just not a big proponent of extra things. I try to keep it minimal. Like it's already like we need a chlorinator, we need fertilizer, we need root tabs, we need wonder shells. Try not to add too many more because people's heads can only digest so much. Let's see here. Do the polls help with YouTube or business more? Mostly business. We love that we can ask a big group of aquarium people, what do you think about this? And then I like to see if that lines up with what I think. So if I think that most people don't need Chemi Pure Green, I might ask a poll of like, do you have problems of phosphates in your water? And then if people are, and I might say yes, no, I'm unsure. And if like it's, mostly is unsure and no, then I go, okay, I'm probably on the right track here. We shouldn't necessarily need to sell it. But that changes over time too. So just because I do a poll one day doesn't mean in 5 years it's not different, or things like that. So, sometimes you just want to check in, like, are we still doing the right thing here? Because maybe the public opinion has changed, or maybe aquascaping 5 years ago and 10 years ago is a lot different than today. What's the most amount of shrimp you've seen in someone's tank? Probably our store tanks, where we'll have 400 or 500. It's fun when you drop in a plant with algae or something that's clean like 7 minutes later. Chemi Pure for salt is king. The stuff really works to get rid of red slime. Good. Saltwater runs much differently. People, plants, macroalgae, and things like that are this like little subset of the hobby, where like plants and things like that in freshwater are kind of a majority. Will we ever make an Aquarium Co-op sump filter? Most likely not. If we were, we'd make an overhead filter probably, but when it comes down to logistics of shipping and stuff like that, plus I genuinely believe most people will never need a sump in their life ever. It's kind of like most people that own trucks and minivans never actually use them to the capacity. Now, there are definitely, like, I got a family of 8. We use it every day to get the kids to school. That product totally fits that family. Then you got someone like me. I only use the vans to move product from place to place, but then I have to use them as a normal vehicle sometimes. Not very optimal, right? And there's a bunch of people that, like, I know a bunch of people that own trucks and drive them every day, and they're lucky to put something in the bed of that truck once a month. Like, you should just own a car. But that's I'm a truck guy. I know I've triggered some people right there, but the sump's kind of the same thing of like, so few aquarium systems will ever need a sump in freshwater. In saltwater makes a little more sense because you got to put the protein skimmer somewhere, but in freshwater it's like, I'm not sure that I would focus my time and energy on such a small portion of the hobby. Are there any puffers for a 35-gallon community tank? Some would argue you could do Amazon puffer, maybe a pea puffer. I really like puffers kind of as their own thing, but the reason I say that is when it comes to feeding them, it can get more and more difficult depending on the other animals. So even if it's like they'll cohabitate, like they're not attacking each other, it's like, oh, well, your little chain loaches are eating up all the clams or the snails or the bloodworms that the puffer, now he's getting skinny and this and that. So it takes a bit to, I guess, get the right mix of fish. Cory, you were talking about somebody breeding for aqua puffers in a pond a while ago. Could I elaborate? I don't remember exactly the context, but when they are doing it, it's in a massive setting. So people, it can be done. Like they will lay eggs in an aquarium, but in general, they set up male and female pairs in ponds, lay all the eggs, catch the fish back out, raise them up because there's lots of gunk in the pond to help raise fry. Jimmy's truck looks so good too. Jimmy doesn't have a truck anymore. He drives a Supra now. You can follow him on his Instagram. Thing looks awesome. My mom used a van every day to deliver packages to businesses. Yeah. I mean, don't get me wrong. A product made to do a specific task when it's used to do that, it's amazing. It's, like I think the number one sold vehicle in America is the Ford F-150. And the weird part is like there's not enough need for those trucks though. That's the weird, and I get it. Like if let's say you're just a single person and you're never gonna have any more people in a vehicle, and you're like, yeah, but a truck can do more things. It's true. Yeah. I love my station wagon. I'm a station wagon nerd for sure. I love station wagons. I like vans too. Like that's why I don't own trucks. Is if you gave me a choice, living in Washington, it rains fairly often, and if like as long as it'll fit in the back of a van, I love that it doesn't get wet and I gotta move it after, I gotta move it. In aquariums, used to move aquariums a lot. I go buy them on Craigslist and stuff. And I was happy to have them covered. Same, even when we pick up fish and plants and stuff from the airport, if you put that in the back of a truck, even with a tonneau cover, they cool down really quick compared to being in a temperature controlled van. So that's one of the reasons I like having a van when I do those runs. And I used to do them all the time. So when I bought my van, Katie was still going to the airport 2 or 3 times a week and picking up plants. And we love the fact that we can set the temperature in the van to for the fish and plants. So that is a fun fact. Fun fact, using the Aquarium Co-Op towel makes your fish look better. It also makes your hair look better. It's a little inconvenient though. I have to towel off with the Aquarium Co-Op towel. It's this big every day. Little. I have to rotate like 3 of them, but it gets the job done. I actually wanted to put Aquarium Co-Op towels in our guest bathroom, but I was like, oh, hell no. Bought a minivan, not going back to anything else. I think there is a sweet spot with a station wagon. A station wagon get a lot done. That's all I'm saying. Any hatchback, like Dean drives a hatchback. Hatchback vehicles, they're dang near peak performance for me, I think. For the way I live my life, right? Obviously, if I was working in construction every day, completely different life. If I went, fishing and other stuff every day, different life. For me, I'm a fish nerd, so I like to keep my stuff warm. Yeah, so no more camping videos. Yeah, I mean, a super doesn't really get up to the mountains as much, and we've been busy, so we haven't done any more lately. I want to. We've been kind of jonesing to go do it, but best place to buy a pistos, local store if you can, because then you can kind of see, and hopefully they'll pair up, and you can see them digging a pit and everything. Otherwise, online, my recommendation is the Wet Spot Tropical Fish. Make sure you write that out. You don't want to end up on a website you don't want to be on. So 6 co-op towels together, make a bath towel. All right. Yeah, the new Bronco looks amazing. Yeah, there's one person in the company owns one, and another person wants to get one. Subaru Outback has been working like a charm. I do love Subaru Outback. I own a Outback myself, and does great. I mean, there's times when now that we don't use the minivan for minivan things very often, I really think about like, wow, maybe we should just own 2 Subarus. But it doesn't make sense to necessarily like make a trade and do all of that. Like we'll lose value and all of those types of things. And so we'll just, unless a friend in real life is like, hey, let's trade. Unlikely that I'll swap. Well, anytime soon anyway. You never know. That used car market's coming down by the minute. It's going to be a while now that Bob broke his leg. He didn't break his leg. He just got a gnarly knot on it. Yeah. Any advice on getting into Congo spotted puffers? Make sure you see them eat before you buy them. That'd be one thing. Make sure you've got your snail game on point. You got easy access to frozen foods. A well-established aquarium planted. Be fairly confident in your fish keeping ability. Make sure it's something you really want. We watch a lot of people like, oh yeah, I really want one. And then like 9 months later, you're like, well, the problem is it's just, all it is the puffer. It just does its puffer thing. Like, yeah, that's why you bought a dog. And then 8 months later, you're like, this thing just keeps wanting to eat and play and go for walks. Like, yeah, that's why I got a dog. Yeah, I'm over that now. So we see a lot of people that, they get hyped up on the puffer, and it is super cool. But then you kind of got to realize, like, well, yeah, the puffer just kind of does his puffer thing. And if you're into that, like I am, awesome. You'll love it. Let's see here. How can I get my new panda corridors to start eating? Well, one option, I don't know what other fish are in there, but one option would be to buy some Rapashi food because it'll stay water stable for over 24 hours. So you can put a cube in that in there and just let it sit. Lights go out, maybe they get little more adventurous. Maybe they're brand new to you. Maybe it's going to take 4 or 5 days for them to be comfortable anyway. Try some frozen foods, give them time. But Rapashi foods, truth be told, I do not feed enough Rapashi foods. I need to stop being lazy. It's not lazy. That's not true. I use that as a defense mechanism of like, I'm just lazy. But the answer is, talking with like my business coach and stuff. It's not that I'm actually lazy because I work an insane amount. It's that I haven't prioritized time. So really, I need to prioritize time because Rapashi is an amazing food, and I just don't prioritize the actual making of it enough. And I should. Really, what I need to do is I need to get like a kettle out in the fish room, so that way I'm not making it in the house. Because too often, what I'm doing for my own setup is, oh, dinner's gonna be ready in 20 minutes. Great, I'll go feed the fish. And so that's not a great time. Like, oh yeah, I need to make Rapashi. Like, you don't want to be making Rapashi while you're making dinner. And so if I had it out there, though, maybe I'll just get a microwave. I'm gonna just order a microwave. That'll be way better. Because I'm already trying to set it up because we have meetings and stuff out there, and we've got the fridge and it's got a water dispenser in it, and a microwave wouldn't be bad to have out there either. I can make a Rapashi. That'll be easy, and I've got the sink so I can clean it back out. But that's really what holds me back is because I've optimized my life too much, and there's, I kind of drank the Kool-Aid, and you can work between every meeting and this and that. Now there's not the 6 minutes it takes to make Rapashi in the day for me, and so I'm creating those gaps again so that I can hopefully do these better things. Rapashi does well in my smaller tanks, but I think it made my dojos bloated and constipated. That would not be my experience. It's, in my opinion, very hard to be constipated because it's already filled with the water. So maybe you did a blend that was too high in protein or something, and maybe your dojo loach has some kind of allergy to it or something. But I've never had that in my experience. Doesn't mean it couldn't though. So my banana plant that I bought some time ago from Aquarium Co-Op is growing a long stem with a leaf on the other side. What may be happening? I don't know. I mean, it sounds to me like you're just explaining a leaf on the other side is going to be tall. Like, banana plants do that? That's what it sounds like. But questions like that, sometimes they just don't get asked the way you're intending. And so, like, well, that answer's a non-answer. But they're like, oh, we're talking about, yeah, that's crazy. Like a picture says 1,000 words sometimes. How often should I clean my sponge filter? 10-gallon heavily planted tank with Celestipril Danios, Ember Tetras, Autos, and Shrimp. I would say whenever you're doing some big maintenance. So that could be the way I would run it. If it's our sponge filter, not a fine one, maybe as often as once a month. But the reality for me, like in the store, we do them sometimes every 2 weeks, depending on the tanks. At home, if I had a really heavily stocked tank, maybe once a month. But on average, I shoot for somewhere between 3 and 6 months. Where my schedule fits, and not all of them are the same, right? Like turtles eat a lot more, they need more. Puffers eat a lot more, need more cleaning. But then there might be like that shrimp tank, once a year maybe. Am I still playing WoW Classic? Nope. Playing some EverQuest in my downtime a little bit, but mostly not. Goldfish dry foods. What would I recommend? What do I feed my goldfish? I like the Hikari Excel pellet, either floating or sinking. That's the one that I like. I feed them krill flake. Really colors them up well from extreme. Duckweed if I have it around. Frozen brine shrimp fairly often. Spirulina also in there. Yeah, I mean, for the most part, goldfish will eat anything, and I don't go out of my way to make a special diet for them. Instead, kind of more try to vary it a little bit, and I find they do well on that for me. Repast would be great though. You could make that, but I just, that's I should be feeding, or I would like to feed that more, but I just don't. Everyone's talking about EverQuest. Yeah, there's a new server in May. Maybe I'll play. Depends on what the rule set is. I do play on private servers right now with my kind of old school crew. Mostly, I just like to hang out in Discord a little bit. Most of my gaming is me reading reviews, answering your guys' comments on the forum and Facebook and that kind of stuff, while maybe talking to them about the game that I wish I had more time to play in Discord. Would like to hear about nitrites. What causes how to help it long term? Well, it's a result of food or things breaking down in your aquarium. So it starts out as ammonia, progresses to nitrite, and then eventually would process to nitrate. The ways to remove those from your aquarium would be live aquarium plants. So that's why we talk about those a lot, or water changing your water. Those are both good ways. There are some pads like nitrate absorption pads and nitrite absorption pads, but they're not as easy and effective, or not. They're not really long-term solutions. So I would look into plants and water changes. That being said, something like Easy Green, we actually will be dosing. This has nitrogen in it, and so nitrogen isn't necessarily only a bad thing. It's also a good thing. Are we on Twitch? No. Nope. I never really got into the Twitch culture, and from like a business marketing standpoint, it's just terrible. Like it's a dead end platform that it's it's great for doing what we're doing right now, but YouTube does that also, and so that was always my stance on it, and YouTube has won the war basically. It's just a matter of time until Twitch finishes losing, unless Amazon really doubles down and says, hey, we need to dig this thing out of the hole it's in. So we won't be transitioning over there because it's, one, just be more work, and two, I think it's, whenever you're working for less return, it's just inefficient. Let's see here. Have I ever tested the efficacy of your sponge filters over time? Do they ever really stop working? Well, I've had some sponge filters that haven't been cleaned in years, and the tank never broke down, right? But I don't think there's a test that I can run that really makes sense. Part of me believes that no one really even needs filters, because we have plants, we have gravel, we have bacteria on glass, we have all these things. But I do believe that we need air. And one of the easiest things is to have a sponge filter delivering the air, and that provides some circulation. And then we get the mechanical filtration of the sponge filter of like, hey, collect the gunk for me. It makes it easy when I need to go clean. And then also do biological. So it's one of those, in my mind, a $30 investment between air pump and sponge filter, let's say, makes a lot of things easier that we may or may not actually need. So that's where it's like, when it fully gets clogged years down the road, is it still doing its job? Like, kind of, yeah. But I also think that if you just had an air stone and no sponge filter, in that control 2 years later, it'd probably be like they just are performing the same for the most part. Will Fritz complete buying the Fritz from Easy Green? My Anubias Nano are wasting away. Not in my experience. I mean, we dose them all together the same and haven't really run into that. Oh, great. It says my gift card is not valid. I can't deal with it right now. Well, when you're ready to deal with it, email customer service. They'll look into it. Could be a simple issue like that gift card happens to be registered to a certain email, like maybe you've used it on a different email before. Could be anything, you know. Candy says make sure you're using all 16 digits, or just email her. Yeah. We'll get you taken care of somehow, one way or another. We'll figure out what went wrong, and then we'll work through it. Does Easy Green non-usable after 2-year 10-day? Does Easy Green non-usable after 2-year 10-day? Are you saying, like, does it expire? I mean, officially we have to put an expiration, but we have samples that are now, like, I think 6 years old at the factory that when we test the composition, they're still great. So, and I've had bottles I found in the back of my cabinets before that I've used years later. I'm like, it worked fine for me. Back to speaking of blue light, I have a Flue Ball 3.0 and crank blue up to pretty up my blue zebra angels. Yeah. Lighting's magical. You can make it look any way you want. How does someone gift a membership? I think you have to be on a laptop, and you just there's like a money symbol, like Super Chats and other channels. You just click there and you choose how many you'd want to donate, I believe. Were we shipping to Australia? We did. And will that ever return? Don't know. We'd rather find a partner in Australia just to import massive products at once, and it saves you guys time and money. I put an Aquarium Co-op power head in my water change barrel to help the heater with water circulation. Helps a ton with making the water all the same temp. Indeed. Yes. Also helps mix salt water if you ever need to do that. What are some safe tank mates for corridors and platies, and you can keep with pygmy cories and normal ones? Lots of tetras, rasboras, danios, stiphangobes, autosynclus, other catfish. Kind of a lot. You know, that's kind of like saying, I've got French fries, a Coca-Cola, and a Snickers candy bar. What other foods could I add to my lunch? Like, I don't know, pizza, corn dog, some tacos, spaghetti, like almost anything, really. I left for a week and didn't feed my white clouds. They've been fine before, but now they don't seem motivated, and one has a sunken belly. What should I do? Try feeding live foods. Get them back excited to eat again. Hatch out some brine shrimp. If you don't have that, try something like frozen cyclops or frozen brine shrimp. There we go. Some gifted memberships. Figuring it out. Paying it forward. I just got a polar blue convict parrot cichlid, and it's the coolest thing. I haven't seen any of those really in person much grown out, but I could see how they'd be cool. How to properly set up a quarantine tank. Well, we've got videos on that. We've got blog articles on that. But in general, a separate tank that you don't keep fish in long term. You can choose whether it's going to have gravel and stuff like that. I personally, my tanks would be normal gravel, like an Anubias on a rock or something like that, and a sponge filter. That'll tolerate a decent amount of salt. It'll tolerate meds. It'll provide a little bit of cover depending on the fish I'm putting in there. It'll handle a little bit of waste. I want something that's, not just, a tote on the floor in the corner of a room. I'd have a heater in there, by the way, if you didn't have a heated room anyway. But yeah, just kind of a real simple, bare bones aquarium that doesn't have things live in it normally. Very often people set one up and like, turns out I'll buy them and I'll find room later, and then they don't find room, and then you don't have a quarantine tank anymore. You just have extra tanks set up and no quarantine. What's a good way to grow Java fern if I don't have the fish in my tank right now to make NO3? Well, don't have fish in my tank. Technically, you could just put in a little bit of fish food and let it be uneaten. You, in my opinion, should buy a fertilizer, Easy Green, if it's available to you, would be a great one. Those are the two main things, because if you write the question differently, I have this thing that would like to eat, and I have no food for it. What should I do? The answer becomes obvious, like, oh, you should feed it. And the ways to feed it are going to be a fertilizer, or you can kind of get a little bit of the way there with just like some rotting food in the tank. It'll look bad and that kind of stuff, but technically, as it breaks down and converts, it would start fueling the Java fern for you. Do we carry this replacement suction cups? I don't think we do. I don't think they provide them for us either. I mean, like allow us to. Allow might not be the right word. I don't think it's a normal thing that we could just purchase. That's what I'm trying to say. Sad to learn last week, the tropical fish world in Bonnie Lake is closing the retail store. The wholesale side is continuing. Yeah, that was actually a topic I almost talked about today, but too often people are just like, you just talk too much about business. So maybe I'll use the last few minutes to talk about that. But yeah, someone was saying that they were asking a question on the forum about why did the plant price in the store go up if we raise the prices due to shipping? And the long answer to that is the retail store actually costs way more money to run than the warehouse does. Just on average, people spend more time in the retail store. The doors opening and closing, so there's more heating costs. There's a bunch of little things that go into it. And so the way I would explain to them is, if we were to split it out, because we don't, that's the reason why they're the same, is it's one system and it makes inventory a lot easier and all these things. So if we raise the price online, it raises in the store. If we raise it in the store, it would raise it online. And vice versa. And it's so you can buy online, return in the store. There's a bunch of reasons why. But if we were to really analyze it, and this is why I encourage people to be willing to spend a little more in their mom and pop store, is if an employee can pick and pack an order at the warehouse, and maybe they can do 30 of those an hour, right? At the retail store, the average is about 3 per hour, because maybe Tuesday morning, maybe they only had 2 customers. And Saturday, maybe they do 6 in an hour. But the average is like 3 an hour. And at the effective wage cost, because our people start at $22 an hour, they get 401k, they get rad healthcare, they get shoes and clothing and fringe benefits and this and that. They basically cost, with taxes and stuff too, they cost about $30 an hour. And so of those 3 purchases that people are going to do an hour per employee on average, that's about $10 in cost. That's basically about the same as shipping, And so what I would say is, what you get when you go to a retail store is to buy the exact specimen you want. You get more options, you get one-ofs, you get all these little perks that you don't necessarily get online. It doesn't make sense to get someone to go shoot this product and do all these things because we have 2 to sell. So we won't. Those will end up at the store. And in general, we don't know it as consumers, but we'll ask more questions, we'll enjoy ourselves, we'll have a good time. A lot of us go to the fish store and we're there for 40 minutes to an hour. Well, that takes up time. And when you're online, that time is just your time, not their time. There's other things that we don't think about in the day-to-day business, and that is, like last month, we had snow days. There was like 2 or 3 days where the store just wasn't open. That's probably $20,000 the store will never generate back. And yet there's still employees, there's still paid time off and all of those things. So there's still costs, there's still, you got to heat the building. There's, all these things we got to do. There's power can go out. But online, if the power goes out or it's a snow day, orders still come in. So the efficiency is much higher for an online business than is a retail business. And I think this is why we're seeing a lot of this trend change over time, in that when you walk into, I was at a PetSmart and a Petco just last week, and I was shocked at just how not very much they're carrying. And I believe that they're still working towards, they want to downsize the footprint because it's inefficient to be in a retail space compared to buying online. And so they're not hyper motivated to fully staff, because as you go to a grocery store or something like that and you have to do your own checkout and it's a more frustrating experience, and if they make the better experience online, you just go online and they actually make more money from that. And I really saw this when I was studying everything I could, as I try to do all the time when it comes to people and business. I really saw this during the pandemic, where and we saw it in our own business. So when we couldn't be open to the public and people could only order at the door and we would go do all this stuff, we were way more efficient. Now, costs went through the roof, right? But all of a sudden, someone that averaged 3 orders an hour was averaging 10, because someone would come up with a list and they go, I need all these things. We'd write down the list, we go catch it all, and there'd be minimal questions, and it was a different experience. Well, also at the same time, that's what restaurants found out. There's a lot of in-person dining that no longer happened. And so they had the drive-through windows or takeout only. Around me, I don't know about you guys, around me, a lot of businesses are still that way only. They're not reopening the in-dining experience. And it's because you have to pay staff to be there, whether there's someone there to eat or not, right? You have to clean the tables. You have to do all of this extra work that you don't if someone takes it to go. If someone walks in and gets their $50 in food for their family and walks back out, that is more efficient than they sat down. They might have got free bread or water or chips and water. They might make a mess while they're there. All of these things, but the business itself makes the same, or makes the same amount of money like on the food. Yeah, you're gonna tip the waiter or waitress and those types of things, but if it's a slow day, that's actually a liability. And so what we're seeing is more and more business figured out it's actually more efficient now being online, even with shipping and stuff, than it used to be, just from economy of scale and that type of thing. Whereas 10 years ago, it wasn't that way. It was more efficient to be in the store because the consumer wasn't as used to it and a bunch of things weren't figured out. And so that's why in our store, yeah, how come we made a change based on an online thing and it did the same in retail? That's why. If we had to make a cut, which we wouldn't, but if we had to, the store is disproportionately not as profitable as online. But we like to have a filming location, we like to have good fish, we like to have all these things, and so it still makes sense for us. And we want to be example as well. But that's where I would implore you to, even though I went to Petco and PetSmart, I was actually looking for very specific things, and neither of them had it. I was looking for a 3-foot long acrylic blade scraper. Neither of them had it. They both had them online, but they didn't have them in the store. But at each one, I still bought something. I bought a net at one of them, which was fine. A fine net that we're going to use for duckweed, because I was like, I need a net that is different than our net, so I know that's the duckweed net. Don't accidentally use that in another tank. And then the other one is I bought the longest scraper they had was like this big. I was like, maybe I can reach it. Couldn't reach it. So I ended up spending about $6 at both places. But that's part of my personal commitment to when I go to a fish store, I always want to buy something. And I don't always buy something fish related. Most often, if we stop at a pet store and my wife's with me, we'll actually buy dog treats or something like that. And it's because I know that the minute I open that door, I cost them money. Someone had to greet me. I let some of the heat out. I'm, going to take up some personnel time. They'll have to, maybe keep an eye and make sure I'm not stealing everything in the place. They'll have to ask me if I need any help. Might use their restroom while I'm there. And I just, as a business owner and a retail store owner, I know what it's like. Even though all of us in the chat, we're the great people to have walk through the door, we also are part of the group where, we've had customers come in and they clog the toilet, or they go to the bathroom and they have an accident. It's on the wall and the floor and all of these things. And it's, it's like, oh, well, we got to get the hazmat stuff out, and no one wants to clean it. It's going to be an hour, and we got to close out the bathroom, and it's, it's busy on a Saturday, and all of this, and all of that costs money and time. And we don't have that problem at the warehouse, right? Because there's no one accidentally ruining the bathroom. It's only our employees that know, hey, go to the bathroom like a normal person and don't smear it on the walls. So yeah, I like it when you guys buy local, whether it's from us or not. I love when you guys give feedback like, oh, I just bought this locally. Great. Because I do believe the way to keep good fish in our hobby is to have local suppliers, fish stores. And the best way to get new people in the hobby is to have somewhere they can drive and learn, because it's really easy to bring your problem there and go, help me with this problem. I got a fish in a bag. What disease is this? Hey, this filter's not working. How can I fix it? And those are important to our hobby. So yeah, that's why the prices sometimes will be different. Every once in a while, we'll make an exception, and that is like the tote bags are cheaper in the retail store, because that's an item that we sell so few of. But when a high moving item like the plants, it's something we can't really duplicate. The other thing I will mention, if like we're sold out of the 12-inch light online, we still have some in the retail store, so go get one if you need one. And then our partner stores still have them as well. So another reason to visit in store is a lot of times if we're sold out online, we'll still have them in store, because they're different inventories and stuff. So yeah, Aquarium Co-op guided tours every hour on the hour. I mean, most people that come in the store want to feed Murphy. That takes time and money for the clams, and we're not talking like, oh, it's going to cost $1 million, but if everything adds a little bit, that's where like, oh, all those little bits add up to like that shipping delta. So yeah, and so some prices were able to come down, like shrimp came down and frozen foods came down and things like that. But if we were to really break them out and really analyze it, a lot of prices should probably go up. But we're lucky in that we have the scale. Most stores won't have that, of having big online business that helps scale the retail. I know that prices are going up. Like we just saw the other day that Tropica plants will be going up another 5% in February, like 6th or something. We don't sell Tropica plants, but if you buy Tropica plants, expect them to go up by 5%, and they went up again last year. And Lasso says, I'm a janitor. I need the work, but this is too real talk. Yeah. We don't have the janitor position, and so all of us, usually it's the managers get in there and take care of it. If you're, as a manager, you're making more, like be the leader, get in there and deal with the bad situation no one wants to deal with. And I've dealt with it a lot at this store, where it's like someone leaves and you go to use the bathroom, you're like, what happened in here? Oh, this is the last thing I need right now. It happens. And it's not necessarily at fault. Like I know one time it was one of our best customers ever, and it was their son that had done it, and the son wasn't feeling well. They spent a ton of money in the store. Like, it's just the cost of doing business. It is what it is. And so Bika 63 gifting a membership. Thank you. Bryce says, can I get a free membership? Well, that depends, Bryce. The more you interact with the channel, you watch videos and you like and you comment and things like that, that's how it values and determines who will get the next free membership. So the more you hang out, the more likely it's you. There you go. Any news on selling in the UK? No, haven't really worked on it / no, nothing groundbreaking yet. So Nope, unfortunately. Did anyone find that bristlenose eat blackberry algae? Mine eats it well, and also eats algae wafers and carnivorous pellets. Mine has never, I mean, I've bred tons of them. I've never really had them chow down on blackberry algae. So I think you've got that unicorn. That's one of those, you be telling people, in a vacuum, yeah, of course they eat it. Mine eat it all the time. Whereas, like, I've never had that happen. I wish, if mine, man, that would be great if bristlenose plecostomus eat blackberry algae. That'd make life easier for so many people. Your explanation of costing a business the moment they were walking in the door has given me a tremendous amount of respect for you. I appreciate the perspective. I will have that in mind when I shop now. Yeah, it's just you know, we're all part of a big system, and part of it for me is like I want there to be someone to be able to ask my questions. I want there to be someone to check me out at the grocery store. I want the little interaction. I want how's your day going? All of those things. And I'm willing to pay a little bit more for it. I'm not willing to go broke. And I realize some people can't afford that to, always make sure they buy something when they go into a pet store. But just at least to be aware that, like, just by existing, it costs money. And, when we all know that somehow we all understand it when it's a kid, right? That if I go in and I spend $100 at a pet store, and then the person that walks behind me is a 10-year-old kid and they spend 2 hours there asking questions and loving it, and they spend no money. Somehow we know that by me spending $100, I'm helping that kid learn and be able to enjoy and do all of these things. Well, we're all doing that on a small level for each other as well. If we all spent $5 every time we went to a store, they're doing a lot better than if only half of us are purchasing and half of us aren't. Now, sometimes there's literally just nothing you need at all, and that's fine, but, I think I did leave one store. I left one store when we went down to Oregon without buying anything. I really tried, and I could not find anything. I even went to the dog section. I was like, maybe I can buy an extra bag of our dog food. They had our brand, but not the duck and Bartlett pear that our dogs eat. That being said, Bob was with me, and he bought a bag of stuff. So it made it worthwhile to the store. But I think in general, it changes your mind a little bit and it gives you some purpose. Hey, if I'm going to go there, I should have a reason to be there and try to buy something. And, I just think it's a good thing. Just like I've been trying to, well, I think I have every day, complimenting someone else's aquarium and spending time to compliment them. I think these are little things that we can do that don't affect our finances and things in a large way for most of us, that will have a big positive impact. Like, you'll feel better knowing that you helped support that store. You'll feel better knowing you complimented someone today. And then if everyone's doing that, your business where you work or whatever will make more money. It'll be better for, that business, and hopefully better for you, and hopefully all of it goes around. That's the goal. And then if you're complimenting other people, maybe someday someone's going to compliment your tank, or maybe what you're wearing that day, or maybe your car, or maybe your smile, right? I do adhere to try to be the part of the change you want to see. And, I'm not going to spend 8 hours a day complimenting people, but if I can do one a day, hey, that's better than none a day. All right. Does it matter for your YouTube channel if you watch their new video the same day or later in the week? Does it make a difference if you watch longer videos in one or multiple times? So it won't matter if you, let's say it was an hour-long video and you watched, or this live stream, 2-hour live stream, if you watched it over 3 days or all at once, won't matter. If you watch it right when it comes out, it's a little bit better just because it trains the algorithm like, wow, people really want to see this. But it really doesn't matter. The more you engage with anything, the more it's going to get rewarded. Do what makes sense for you. That's really, it's not worth trying to go out of your way and make your Sunday worse so you can watch an extra video. If it really made sense to watch it on a Tuesday afternoon, watch it on Tuesday afternoon. That'll be great. All right. I'll try to buy something every time I go to a local fish store. I've been going there 5 years, and they recently commented on it. Yeah. I mean, sometimes it takes a long time for them to realize, hey, you are always buying from us. Sometimes they notice it on the third time or the second time, right? And you never know when a shop or someone's having a terrible day and you're going to be, their good day. And, so it's just over time, doing small acts of kindness or whatever makes a big difference. And, I want to be a part of that. That's why I try to do it. And being that I have this platform and I'm so lucky, if I can amplify it and even half of you start doing it, right? That means 400 plus people are getting commented today that maybe weren't getting commented yesterday. It means in the next month, maybe 400 more sales are going to happen at their local fish store that wasn't happening before. Together, we start becoming very big numbers, and that makes a difference. And so, yeah. All right. Well, that's it for today. We've talked about fish. We talked about some philosophy on business and being a good person and all of that. If you come up with some good questions or problems throughout the week with your tanks, bring them along next week for next Sunday. Get in the chat a little bit early. Ask me a question. If I think, I want to talk about that, I will. Otherwise, I try to answer them in text form. So if it's something like, that's going to take a long time to explain, I'll save that for the live stream because it's a lot of typing. And it makes my job easier. I appreciate that when you guys come with well thought out questions or, just want to be here. That's you guys showing up is half the battle for me. Hey, people are going to be there. They expect me to be there. I better be there. I better show up. I better perform. Hopefully I'll have a good time. And thanks for supporting us in the way that everybody does, whether it's through membership or buying from us or being here or sharing our videos or helping another person on one of our comments, leaving reviews. There's so many ways in which you guys help us every day that we get to do what we love, and that is play with aquariums, help teach people, and make products and sell stuff. So now we're getting to help other local stores. So who knows where we'll be in 10 years if we all keep doing this. So thank you so much, and we'll see you next Sunday. I probably got to pick my nose. It's real itchy. And then I'm going to hit that button. So we'll see you guys later. Bye-bye. If the button ever shows up, come on.